So let's dive right into it, beginning with the leaderboard. I'm really proud to see Bitfarms right at the top of that leaderboard. By the way, these are not closing prices, so there may be some variation, from what you see on the screen right now to what is the official closing price. But the point is, as of not that long ago, a little bit after 4 o'clock in the afternoon, here on Tuesday, February 4th, Bitfarms was at the top of the leaderboard, up about 5% today, closing at $1.47. Right behind it, stronghold digital mining, $3.66 a share, up about 4%. And rounding out the leaderboard is Argo Blockchain, which is a company I've seen consistently, it seems, at the very bottom of the leaderboard, and finally they're in the top 3. So congratulations, Argo. 54 cents, up about 3.5% today. The price of Bitcoin, as I am sure have noticed, has been trading quite wildly. At last check, it was about $97,800 a coin. The network hash rate was quite elevated at about 840, and hash prices themselves not really too inspiring at 58. So I do believe that given that there has been an elevated network hash rate, that we are going to see the price of Bitcoin more than likely go up again, which is great news, of course, for the entire publicly traded Bitcoin mining ecosystem, in particular, I believe, for Bitfarms, right? Now, as it relates to Bitfarms, Bitfarms did indeed come out with a news release yesterday, which it's important that we go over. I'll be the first to confess that I was somewhat underwhelmed to a slight degree with what I read, simply because I know many of us, right, have been really kind of excited for the company to reach certain milestones, and we're not quite there yet, but all in all, I would say this is a very, very good and positive news release. So, operational hash rate of 15.2 exahash. So that is up from the roughly, let's call it 12 exahash or so, which the company had been operating at. Now, are we any closer to 21 exahash? We're going to get there in just a moment, right? Energized 2 North American sites, Sharon, PA, and boy, if I can pronounce this correctly, Biécomieux in Quebec. Gosh, I think I got that wrong. Binding LOI with Hive for sale of the roughly 200 megawatt Paraguayan site, and that's expected to close in Q1 of 2025. Acquisition, of course, of Stronghold Digital Mining on track for Q1 2025 close, and then finally signed an agreement, or 2 different agreements, with ASG and WWT to develop HPC AI business, right? The business that's being developed regarding HPC AI. Okay, so I'm going to quote Ben, the CEO. 2025 is off to a great start. Now, I know for some of you out there, you're like, what the F are you talking about, Ben? Like, our stock price has like been, sucker punched to the floor. But okay, let's cut him some slack here, okay? 2025 is off to a great start. We are on track this quarter to close both our acquisition of Stronghold Digital Mining and the strategic sale of the 200 megawatt Paraguay site, data center site, right, to Hive. These transactions are basically, and I'm paraphrasing here a little bit, I don't want to read word for word. These transactions basically transform Bitfarms' energy pipeline by immediately rebalancing its portfolio to North America with great assets for both HPC and Bitcoin mining. The accretive sale of the Paraguayan site provides meaningful capital and cost savings associated with the redeployment of miners in the US that will be applied towards our American gigawatt growth pipeline. Really important here, to accelerate our HPC strategy, we recently engaged, and we talked about this, right, the 2 consulting firms. So that's really great. They're going to do a formal evaluation of the various sites and the data centers, and to really figure out how we can push, right, the HPC AI business forward. That is a really, really big deal. Now, from Ben's perspective, and again, I'm paraphrasing here a little bit, right? So getting long-term contracts associated with HPC AI would better monetize many of Bitfarms' North American energy assets with long-term steady cash flows and earning streams, creating a powerful and resilient portfolio that will generate shareholder value for years to come. Now, we're going to get into some Bitcoin stuff here in just a second, but I want to emphasize what Ben's saying. It's maybe a controversial view, but I actually agree to a large degree that that's the kind of business I think Bitfarms should attempt to prioritize at least as much, if not maybe even slightly more than the Bitcoin business, right? The Bitcoin business meaning, buying a bunch of miners out in the market, plugging them in, and then hoping for hash prices to cooperate. That can be an incredibly lucrative business, but it can also be an incredibly, capitally intensive business, which inevitably seems to lead to dilution and to all kinds of issues, specifically as it relates to Bitcoin mining machines, which we're going to get to in a moment here. So I do agree that attempting to really kind of, have a win-win business model where we get these HPC AI customers, they have long-term contracts, we're providing them with energy, right? That I think can be a stabilizing function for this business. And then, hey, you say, but wait, where's the growth in that? Well, okay, well then how about the Bitcoin side being the more speculative side of that? Not to mention all of the various, for lack of a better way to describe it, the sort of the quasi hedge fund portion of Bitfarms, which we see emerging, which does all kinds of interesting things in the financial markets as it relates to Bitcoin hedging, synthetic HODLs, and all kinds of other stuff with options contracts, right? That could be quite lucrative potentially as well. Okay, now this is critical. Operationally, Bitfarms grew its hash rate. I'm sort of paraphrasing Ben here. It grew its hash rate by 19% in January to 15.2 exahash, with the energization of 2 additional sites and further miner deployments at the stronghold sites. Miner deliveries are ongoing in February, with installations scheduled through Q2 of this year. When all miners are successfully deployed, we will have 21 exahash installed across 15 sites in 4 countries. Let me emphasize that. When all the miners are installed, we're going to get to 21 exahash, okay? I think it's really critical that we all agree that that's the trajectory, right, that Bitfarms is heading in. However, due to the underperformance of some of our T21 miners, we are derating our guidance by 14% to 18 exahash in the first half of 2025. Bitfarms, right, is focused on resolving the T21 underperformance to drive better performance across all our sites. Our energy efficiency target of 19 joules per terahash or watts per terahash remains unchanged. Additionally, in order to accommodate potential HPC integration into our Sharon location, the construction timeline is being pushed back from 2025 to 2026, reducing our 2025 year-end energized capacity by 80 megawatts. Okay, so when combined with the Paraguayan sale, right, our 2025 year-end energized capacity is 675 megawatts, Ben concluded. Okay, so again, I think this is, I know for sure it's disappointing for those who are already exasperated by the fact that Bitfarms did not hit the 21 exahash target by year-end 2024. Now we're hearing, okay, well, we're kind of initially going to be aiming for 18, which is about 3 or so exahash above where Bitfarms is at now. And that then, hey, yes, when everything's all said and done, we'll get to 21. And I have no doubt that it's also somewhat disappointing to hear that, okay, suddenly the Sharon site, the construction is being pushed off even further to 2026, right? Now, with all of that being said, I do suspect that the fact that Bitfarms did as well as it did today, the day after this news release came out, might potentially suggest that the market is starting to kind of take a closer look at this. The potential for there to be some very meaningful, very financially meaningful contracts that materialize as it relates to the HPC AI side of the things, right? That side of the business. to have some of that materialize in the next quarter or two, or at least for there to be some evidence that that's going to materialize, I think it could add a tremendous amount of value to this company. Because remember, you sort of then step off the proverbial hamster wheel of constantly having to go into the market, buying mining equipment, right? Trying to plug it in, trying to optimize it, trying to get it to work. By the way, T21 miners are exceptional miners, right? I mean, these are not some like fourth party, no name brand Bitcoin mining machines, right? These are some of the very best, most reputable mining machines on planet Earth. So to the extent there are some issues, it's not, you can't really say, well, Bitfarms doesn't know what they're doing, right? It's, hey, look, stuff happens. Even the very best Bitcoin machine manufacturers, sometimes, right, machines are produced. Sometimes there are issues. You got to work through those issues. And the great news is that by taking the time to really figure out, hey, why is there underperformance, right, with regard to the T21 miners, right? Trying to figure that out and then deploying a solution throughout all the T21 miners in Bitfarms' ecosystem, it just makes sense to me. But yeah, I have a lot of empathy for those amongst us who are particularly frustrated that it would seem as if though we're not, meaning Bitfarms is not moving as quickly as I think some people would have liked to have seen on having all of that Bitcoin mining infrastructure plugged in, energized, and out there mining Bitcoin, right? So, it is what it is. Now, the company itself, insofar as its production numbers, I'm just taking a look here, 201 Bitcoin were produced in January 2025. That, I think, is a very, very good number from my perspective. And, in the grand scheme of things, Bitcoin, I've said this before. I think Bitcoin mining can be incredibly, profoundly lucrative, right? But I would hate to see Bitfarms just be nothing but a company that buys Bitcoin mining machines that rapidly depreciate, that have a finite amount of time to earn a return on investment. And if it doesn't earn that return on investment in a timely manner, they need to be cycled out. More capital has to be raised to buy another, set of new generation Bitcoin mining machines, only to plug them in, only to have them have to perform in a finite amount of time before they themselves have to be decommissioned and moved aside to then have more Bitcoin. Like that feels very uninspiring, at least to me. And so to the extent we can have a business with Bitfarms that, is sort of like, Bitfarms beyond Bitcoin, right? Beyond just buying more Bitcoin mining machines, plugging them in and going through this process. Hey, yes, you want to have exposure to Bitcoin? Absolutely. Absolutely. Especially this year. I think you want to have exposure to Bitcoin, right? But I think it's also very, very smart and forward-looking for Bitfarms to realize we've got all these energy assets. Hey, let's make sure we get some stability, some stable revenue sources into this business, that it not simply revolve around the Bitcoin roulette wheel of sorts, where we're going to take a gamble on buying a bunch of machines, plugging them in, hoping there's no issues with the machines, hoping we have good uptime, hoping that we don't have any issues with regard to our data centers, right? All of that type of stuff, right? Hey, getting away from that a little bit, or at least balancing it out, by trying to go after these HPC AI customers, I support that decision. I know it's not popular, but I support it. I think the company is doing the right thing. What do you think? Okay, hey, I said this would be kind of long. Hopefully it's not too excessively long. Let's bring it to a close. Let's stay positive. Let's be great. And we'll see each other again tomorrow.